Tuesday evening. This is lecture 26, commandment number 8, thou shalt not steal, from Exodus 20:15. and this is part 2 of our series on the 8th commandment. I left off with a poem last night, and I'll reread that poem to you again. It has to do with stealing by not doing the things that we should have done. We miss out on so much. I enjoy this little poem. I never cut my neighbor's throat, my neighbor's purse I never stole. I never spoiled his house or land, but God, have mercy on my soul, for I am haunted day and night by all the deeds I have not done. O unattempted loveliness, O costly valor never won. I know for myself there's many times I think, oh, this would be such a good thing if I would do this. But either laziness or unnecessary obligations that I've put myself under prevent me from doing better and doing my best. And many times things go undone. A form of theft against myself, to be sure. And that's what we're talking about right now. We must not steal from ourselves. Listen to this series of verses from the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travelleth, and thy want as an armed man. Later in Proverbs 20, verse 13, we read, Love not sleep, lest thou come to poverty. Open thine eyes, and thou shalt be satisfied with bread. So we rob from ourselves when we waste our time. And we can waste our time by doing things that we think are justified, but truly, if we have another obligation to do something and we don't do it, then we are robbing ourselves. When we waste our money, we rob from ourselves. We are given money, and we need to remember that our income really belongs to the Lord 100%. He allows us to keep 90% of that income to use it as we see fit, only requesting 10% in tithes. But then we give gifts and we give offerings above that many times. When we waste our physical strength on things that are unnecessary. I know idle actions and idle things that we do with our energy sometimes can cost us later. When we indulge in selfishness, we're robbing from ourselves. When we indulge in pride and in covetousness and lust, we're really stealing from ourselves all the valuable things that we could be doing other than these sinful actions. Even when you don't do your best, you're given a job to do and you only do it part way, you're setting up for yourself a reputation, and it's affecting your integrity. You've got a reputation, and you're strengthening the reputation of a lazy man, of a man who can't follow instructions or detail when you don't do your best. I have a friend in our church. He's a dear brother to me, and he has a business of his own. His children help him in that business, and I've already heard news from people that they have done jobs for that they've never seen anybody jump into a job and work as hard as these people work. And I thought, wow, what a good reputation they have. Well, let me ask you, what if they had done opposite of that? What if when they got a job, they went in and they just haphazardly did the job, they didn't really focus on things, they left things undone? What do you think they would have told me about that? Well, these people don't finish what they start, they don't do a very good job, they don't pay attention to detail. So when you don't do your best, even at the small things, it's going to affect your reputation. It's a form of stealing. You're taking away that which can be so good for you and helpful. When you fail to study the Word of God, you're stealing from yourself. When you fail in obedience to God, you're certainly robbing yourself. And of course, when we don't tithe and give to the work of the Lord, that's a form of stealing. The Word of God tells us that plainly, and we'll look at that verse a little later on. When you stray away from church and any of the means of grace, I believe that the preaching of the Word of God is a means of grace. It is one of those things that God uses to strengthen us. If you stay away from that, you're robbing yourself of the means of grace. If you stay away from the Lord's table, so make sure you're faithful to these various things. In Matthew 6:19, we read this: "Lay not up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal." So he's reminding you, don't lay treasures up on this earth, because all sorts of bad things can happen to them anyway. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. There won't be any corruption in heaven. There won't be any devouring moths in heaven. There won't be thieves and robbers or anything of this nature to worry about. When we leave our home, we always lock our doors. Sometimes we'll say, "Did you remember to lock the door? Did you remember to close the garage?" We're so concerned about the pittance of the things that we have in our house that we don't want somebody to steal it and take it away because it's precious to us. So we do the things to protect it. What a shame that we have to live that way. Well, in heaven we won't. We won't have to live that way at all. The Lord, in His blessings, have taken all those things away when we get to heaven. So not only should we not steal from ourselves, but we should not steal from society, our neighbors, and others. In Proverbs 22 and verse number 22, this is what we read: "Rob not the poor because he is poor, neither oppress the afflicted in the gate." You've got a poor man, the last thing you want to do is go steal from the poor man. A vast majority of Americans appear to be living paycheck to paycheck. If we were to, they say that most people don't even have $1,000 in their savings account. If a man were to miss a week's worth of work or 2 weeks worth of work, he could very well be suffering. He's not a wealthy man. The last thing we want to do is go steal from that man. In Malachi chapter 3 and verse number 5, "And I will come near to you in judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers, and against the adulterers, and against false swearers, against those that oppress the hireling in his wages, the widow and the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me, saith the Lord of hosts." So we don't want to be guilty of oppressing anyone, particularly in the form of breaking the 8th commandment. Material stealing is a crime, taking physical objects. But even mind and intellectual stealing is a crime. Making merchandise of others by undermining public virtue is stealing. So if you let's say you own a car lot and your neighbor owns a car lot, and then you make lies about the way that he does business or how he's ripped people off or he's sold inferior material, and you're hoping to gain by that, that is a form of stealing. Not only are you lying, but you're stealing. Malicious slander. In fact, any slander is a form of stealing, because what you're doing, you're removing opportunities from this person to be able to do anything. So don't slander. Be very careful about saying something slanderous. In Proverbs 10, verse number 18, "He that hideth hatred with lying lips, and he that uttereth a slander is a fool." So sometimes we can lie about people, and the really underlying reason for our lying is that we hate those people, and we want to see them hurt or destroyed. And in essence, that is stealing from them, because we're taking away future opportunities. Now, methods that will result in setting up a program to hinder others from attending church or promoting God's work is the same as stealing from others. I think of businesses that open up and they have the special sales on the Lord's Day. That's when their biggest sales days are, or their biggest promotions. I remember restaurants, if you'll bring your church bulletin in, we'll give you 10% off your meal. What are you doing? You're trying to draw people into breaking the 4th commandment by offering a deal for them. And this deal is if you'll break the 4th commandment, we'll give you a dime on every dollar. Do you think there's any irony in that? That they would give you a dime on every dollar, which is equal to the tithe? We'll give you your tithe back if you'll just come in here and eat on the Lord's Day and break the commandment. So you shouldn't be going out to eat on the Lord's Day. You're stealing when you do that. 1 Samuel 18:21, and Saul said, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him. He's going to give his daughter because he knows his daughter. And he said she's going to be a snare to David. And that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Wherefore Saul said to David, Thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in the one of the twain. And Saul commanded his servants, saying, Commune with David secretly, and say, Behold, the king hath delight in thee, and all his servants love thee. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law. Now, if your daughter is so bad that you know marrying her off to somebody would be a snare to their soul, shame on you. First of all, that you raised such a wicked daughter. Secondly, that you would do something like that to another man. But Saul has always been enterprising and lying since the time he hid among the stuff and wouldn't come and take his rightful position as the anointed king. And then his very first act was to not obey the Lord completely, but to break the Lord's commands. So don't do something that can result in setting up a program that might hinder people from attending church or even to be involved in good religious activities. We must not steal from God. We must not do it. This would be one of the highest forms of this sin, if you ask me, committed against God. It would be a sacrilege. God is robbed when we withhold from Him the glory that is due Him. Have you ever had somebody who makes the statement, they'll say something to the effect of, boy, I'll tell you what, that doctor was a good doctor. I'm glad he took care of my mama like he did. He's the best. He's a great doctor. And someone say, well, you know, the Lord had a hand in that. Oh, no, this was all the doctor. Well, now, wait a minute. The doctor didn't get his skills and his abilities in any way. And if God chose not to preserve her life, I don't care how good that doctor was. He could have never saved her. Truth is, don't withhold glory from God where it is due. God is also robbed when we have unfaithfully discharged our stewardship. You have no right to steal yourself from God. If you do not use yourself for the glory of God, you are in effect stealing from God. If you withhold your talents from God's service, you're stealing from God. I had a preacher tell me one time, I was a very young preacher, and he said, one of the things you need to be praying for in your church is pray that God will send you a Christian plumber to your church, a Christian electrician, and He'll send you a Christian carpenter, and He'll send you a Christian doctor, and He'll send a Christian lawyer. And he said, and they'll all join your church. And he said, man, I'm going to tell you what, it'll be so nice if you'll have those faithful, talented, skilled men, because they will use their talents for the glory of God and help the church. They won't charge the church to take care of various things out there. And if they don't have it within their ability to do those things for free, they'll offer discounts that go beyond anybody in town. He said, just pray that God will send you men like that. He said, and if you don't, just pray that God sends you people with deep pockets so you can hire the men that you need to do those things. And I was thinking, when I was hearing him say that, I thought, how silly. Why would I ever pray something like that? You know, we're to go to God with all things in our prayers, and we're not to fret, but we're to trust Him in these things. And the truth is if a man does have a talent and he's a believer, shouldn't he be using those talents for the glory of God? If I have a piece of equipment, for example, maybe I own a bulldozer, or maybe I own a carpet cleaning machine, or maybe I own something else that could be utilized, and our church needs something done like that. How ready should a Christian man be to say, hey, I've got that. I can help you. I have that talent. Now, I have the talent of being able to pick up boards and hand to somebody, or hand a nail to them, or a hammer. I wouldn't know how to do anything beyond that to really be successful. All you have to do is look around what I've got here. Anything that's been done with any success around here, I can point to my dad, or point to several men in the church who've come along beside me and helped me to do things on this property that really have talents. They use their talents for the glory of God. And I'm thankful. My dad moved in with us a few years back, and I was telling my wife the other night, I said, he is very talented. He can figure things out. 90 years old, he can reason and figure things out that I can't figure out. And I listen to him, I watch him, and I'm paying attention because I know his time on earth is probably limited. I doubt he's going to live to be 110 years old. So I'm not going to have 20 more years with my father. So in the process of that time, I'm trying to learn and grow in knowledge of all the things that he has the ability to do. When he says, do it this way, I'm kind of, oh, Dad, I don't know if we ought to do it that way or not. That doesn't make sense. Why? No, I'm telling you, you try it this way. Oh, well, okay, we'll do it, and it works. I'm kind of like, well, guess what? He knew. I didn't have any idea. So don't withhold your talent from God. If you have the ability to do something, maybe your only ability is to write a check. Maybe that's all you're really good at. You don't have a particular trade that you have been versed in. Use it for the glory of God, whatever you've got. If you withhold your time from God, you're stealing from God. You know, if we were to tithe of all that we have income-wise, a reasonable assumption would be that the time that God gives us in a day ought to be dedicated at some level to Him as well. I'm not saying tithe exactly, 10% of 24 hours, but what I'm saying is don't waste your time so that you're unable to be a blessing and serve God. If you withhold your treasures from God, you're stealing from Him. Remember, as I said, God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, but He also owns those hills as well. And He's the creator of all things. There's nothing that we have in our hand that God has not put in our hands. He makes one statement in the book of Psalms. He said, if I was hungry, I wouldn't tell you. Because He said, I've created all things and all things are mine. So we need to remember, every dollar that's in my wallet belongs to the Lord. I need to be a good steward of that dollar. If you're withholding your tithes from God, you are indeed stealing from God. There is a movement going on that has been going on since the beginning of the church that tithing is not necessary in the Christian era. Don't tithe. In fact, they argue because as believers we ought to be so grateful we give more than a tithe. It's amazing how people don't want to be tied down with a commandment. We want to just do everything from a loving heart. And the bottom line is, nothing is set up that way in real life. Because the same person that argues that would never allow their children to live in their household under those standards. I just want my children to obey with a loving heart, not because they have some ruthless command from me. Okay, just let them go. Children, clean your room from a loving heart. And when you don't, I'll understand. You just didn't have a loving heart. No parent directs his home like he wants the church directed. So let's be realistic about this, will you? In Malachi 3:8, oh, it's the Old Testament, Pastor. Right, it's the Word of God. Any other questions? Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Man, if nothing else, I would just test God on that. He's made a promise to us, and let's just be faithful to stand firm in obedience to the commands He's given us. Now, we are thieves and robbers if we are not giving to God our tithes, our talents, our treasures, our time. We need to lay ourselves continually at the proverbial altar of service and continually give all we can to His work. It's a joy. Now, in conclusion, there are other forms of theft. You can defraud someone. This is a form of thievery. In 1 Thessalonians 4:6 says that no man go beyond and defraud his brother in any matter, because that the Lord is the avenger of all such, as we also have forewarned you and testified. Now the word defraud means to cheat, to swindle, And sometimes there's a word we'll use. We say to jilt someone. Um, I don't use that word very often. I don't like the word personally. But when you swindle someone or defraud someone, you're saying, I'm going to give you something for something, but you shortchange them. Or I'm going to promise you something, but I don't have the ability to deliver it. That's defrauding. Secondly, is the failure to pay one's debt. That's a form of theft. In Romans 13:8, we're told to owe no man anything, but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. This isn't saying you can't have a debt, a legitimate debt. It's saying don't fail to pay that debt. If you owe somebody something, pay what you owe. We owe vows, pay the vow. If you've signed a contract with somebody that I'm going to do this or that for this amount of money, do what you've committed to do for that. Owe no man anything. And then I know that it is the in thing in today's society to declare bankruptcy. But if you don't intend to repay that, if you don't intend to go back and fix that matter with those people, don't incur a debt that you're intending to go bankrupt in. I knew a man in business one time that told me, he said, I borrowed money knowing full well I wasn't going to be able to pay it back, but I had already weighed my options and realized I would make more money by declaring bankruptcy than I would in trying to work things out. Now, if you borrow money from me, knowing full well you don't intend to pay it back, you know what I call that? Theft. Yes, but obviously things are not that way. There's people that'll run money up on credit cards, knowing full well they can't pay it. They'll use it on luxuries, for lust, whatever they want to use it for, knowing full well I'm not going to pay this credit card debt, but they can't come take my home, they can't do this or that to me. I'll just get some bad credit, but man, I can run up some serious debt, and they'll do it. That is thievery. Thievery. Psalm 37, verse 21, the wicked borroweth and payeth not again, but the righteous showeth mercy and giveth. Bankruptcy laws are made to protect those who can't pay and to protect those who have loaned. So operating within those laws is legitimate, but not if you have already purposed in your heart that the intention of borrowing money is to go bankrupt. It would be very wicked to do that, or to just simply refuse to pay, like in a credit card debt. Borrowing and not returning something is also theft. In Exodus 22, in verse number 14, if a man borrow aught of his neighbor, and it be hurt or die, the owner thereof being not with it, he shall surely make it good. The wicked borroweth and payeth not again, Psalm 37:21. But the righteous showeth mercy and giveth. I've heard of people borrowing things, knowing full well they don't intend to give them back. And if you borrow somebody's car and you tear it up, be willing to fix it. The rule my dad set when I was at home, and whether this has biblical precedence or not, I don't know. But this was my dad's rule. If you can't afford to lose it, don't borrow. In other words, I remember getting my car, the first car I ever bought, paid less than $1,000 for it, but it was a lot of money to me at the time. And somebody wanted to borrow my car, and Dad said, could you afford to go out and get another one? I said, no, sir. I paid cash for that car. I don't have that much cash. He said, never loan something you can't afford to replace unless you intend to be willing to lose it. And that was good advice at the time, because the person wanting to borrow my vehicle, I remember, was kind of a bum, and he probably wouldn't have ever paid it back. So if you're going to loan, make sure you loan with the full understanding that you may not get it back. Now, like I said, I'm not saying that the advice my dad gave me was found on some biblical principle, but it saved me from being hurt in that instance. Gambling is another form of theft. And what I mean by that, a person takes something that he is dedicated to use for something else, maybe to buy his groceries for his family. Maybe he's taking this money and he's supposed to pay off a debt that he owes to somebody. But he imagines in his mind, hey, if I go gamble this money, I can increase it. Our first obligations are to take care of those things that we owe, and to make sure that we don't in any way defraud or attempt to rob from someone. And Leviticus 19:13 says this, thou shalt not defraud thy neighbor, neither rob him. The wages of him that is hired shall not abide with thee all night until the morning. Imagine a guy gets paid and he says, I owe a bill, but I'm not going to pay that bill. I'm going to go try to make money off of it by gambling or something of this nature. And if I can, then tomorrow I'll go pay the bill. But he loses in gambling at that point. And if you owe something, go pay it. Don't gamble in the aspect that you think I can increase this and do better later, instead of doing what your obligation is to do today. Tenants who needlessly damage the property and furniture of the landlord that they are under are stealing. It's theft. Exodus 22:14, and if a man borrow aught of his neighbor, and it hurt or die, as we said, the owner thereof not being with it, he shall surely make it good. But if the owner thereof be with it, he shall not make it good. And if it be an hired thing, it came for his hire. So if you're working on someone's property and they say, I need you to come cut down a tree, and you go onto that property with your chainsaw, start cutting down your tree for a price, and you tear your chainsaw up while you're cutting that tree down, it's not on the owner, it's on you. However, if that man says, hey, can I borrow that chainsaw to cut my tree down? And you say, sure, and you're not there, and he destroys your chainsaw, guess what? He needs to replace your chainsaw. He needs to fix whatever it is he broke. Here's a few helps to avoid the sin of theft, and we'll be through with this, only in 2 parts. Number 1, engage in honest labor. Idle people tend to be the most tempted to do mischief. Keep your hands busy doing good things. Secondly, strive against the spirit of selfishness by seeking to help others. So when you make money, after you've paid your debts, paid your tithes, paid the things that you're obligated to pay, start asking yourself, how can I be a blessing? Yes, I need to put something back for winter like the ant does, but I need to make sure that I don't greedily hold on to everything. Number 3, don't covet anything. You offset this sin by giving liberally to those in need. Fourthly, don't bring reproach on the name of the Lord by ever stealing anything. Fifthly, cultivate the grace of contentment. Be content in what things that you have. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 and 7 and 8 give us a good guideline for that very thing. And lastly, be temperate in all things. Set your affection on things above and not on things on the earth. And remind yourself daily of the grace of God and how that what you have is in fact from God and a blessing from God. Be not weary in well-doing, for in due season you shall reap, if you faint not. So be faithful in this area of the 8th commandment, thou shalt not steal, Exodus 20:15.